For decades, when the biggest defense decisions arrived, Canada fell into line with Washington. Not out of weakness, out of habit. American planners assumed it. NATO expected it. Ottawa delivered it. That era may be ending. Because behind closed doors, Canada is no longer just debating timelines. It is weighing a decision that could reset the entire relationship between Canadian air power and American defense expectations. Canada is seriously considering Sweden's Gripen fighter jet, and this is not a routine change of supplier. It is a signal, a shift, a statement that Canada intends to choose capability and independence over tradition. For years, the story barely changed. Canada kept its CF-18 fleet flying far longer than anyone originally intended. These jets entered service in 1982. They were supposed to retire by 2020, then 2025. Now the deadline has stretched to 2032. Each extension was framed as temporary. Each upgrade sold as a bridge to the future. But that bridge turned into a long road of delays, rising maintenance costs, and shrinking margins for error. According to defense assessments, 60% of the Royal Canadian Air Force inventory is now unserviceable. Many CF-18 airframes are pushing 45 years in operation and approaching the end of their structural service life. The jets still fly. But the question is no longer whether they can take off. The question is how long Canada can keep pretending that extending yesterday's aircraft is the same as preparing for tomorrow's threats. And the threats are not theoretical anymore. The Arctic is becoming contested. Long-range patrol demands are increasing. Intercept timelines are tightening. In that environment, dependence is not just inconvenient. It becomes a strategic risk. Canada signed a contract for 88 F-35 stealth fighters valued at nearly $19 billion. The first 16 jets are already paid for and locked in. Deliveries are expected to begin at a U.S. airbase in late 2026, with jets arriving at Canadian bases by 2028. But then came the trade war. When Prime Minister Mark Carney took office, he ordered an immediate review of the entire F-35 program. The timing was not coincidental. Trump's tariffs had shattered decades of trust. His rhetoric about making Canada the 51st state had crossed a line. The U.S. ambassador warned of serious consequences if Canada abandoned the deal. He argued that NORAD requires both nations to fly the same fighter type. But Canada's industry minister had a different perspective. She stated publicly that the F-35 contract had not delivered enough jobs or industrial benefits. She said Canadians expect more. The defense review reportedly concluded there was no military sense in splitting the order. But the final decision rests with the Prime Minister. And while that review dragged on, Sweden made its move. In November, Sweden launched its largest diplomatic push in decades. King Carl XVI Gustaf and Queen Sylvia led a state visit to Canada with over 60 business leaders and the country's defense minister. The message was clear. Sweden wants Canada to buy the Gripen, and it brought something Washington cannot offer. Saab's CEO confirmed the company is ready to establish a manufacturing, assembly, and research facility in Canada. The proposal includes technology transfer, intellectual property rights, and partnership with Bombardier. The numbers are staggering. Saab claims the deal would create 9,000 to 10,000 jobs. Assembly lines would operate on Canadian soil. Research centers would open in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. But here is what makes this different from any previous offer. Ukraine signed a letter of intent to purchase up to 150 Gripen fighters. Sweden simply does not have the production capacity to fill that order alone. It needs a partner. Canada, with its world-class aerospace industry, is the obvious choice. Sweden's defense minister stated explicitly that Canada's strong avionics sector and skilled workforce make it the perfect partner to help ramp up production. This is not just a sales pitch. It is an industrial opportunity that could reshape Canadian defense manufacturing for generations. The Gripen follows a very different logic than the F-35. It is built for nations that must operate alone if necessary. Designed for efficiency in extreme conditions, it reflects the reality of Canada's environment. It can operate from short improvised runways, even public highways if required. Maintenance is modular. Turnaround times are short. These are not conveniences. They are necessities for patrolling vast Arctic regions where infrastructure is limited and response time is critical. The aircraft's electronic warfare suite gives pilots flexibility across surveillance, air defense, and multi-role combat missions while requiring far fewer logistical resources. Cost efficiency is another advantage. The Gripen costs significantly less to operate than the F-35. Lower fuel consumption and maintenance expenses allow Canada to acquire a larger fleet, train more pilots, and invest in complementary systems like drones and surveillance networks. Perhaps most importantly, Canada would control its own aircraft. Software upgrades would not require American permission. Modifications could happen on Canadian terms. For a country that just watched its closest ally threaten annexation, that independence matters. Washington's reaction has been cautious but revealing. For decades, American planners assumed Canadian procurement would naturally align with U.S. systems. A Gripen decision disrupts that expectation entirely. But the Gripen is fully compatible with NATO communication standards and data links. Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and Norway already operate a mixed fleet concept across the Nordic region. They work closely together despite flying different aircraft. As Sweden's defense minister pointed out, from a strategic perspective, this actually creates more problems for Russia. Moscow must diversify its air defense systems to counter multiple platforms. Russia has been quietly building military presence across the Arctic. A new base on Wrangel Island sits just 300 miles from Alaska. Reopened Soviet-era facilities now host advanced radar systems and missile batteries. Canada's choice forces both allies and adversaries to recalculate. A dispersed autonomous air force that can sustain operations across vast frozen territory represents a different kind of deterrent. Every hour a jet is grounded for complex maintenance represents lost sovereignty. The Gripen's design addresses this directly. This is not simply about replacing old jets. It is about whether Canada is finally ready to control its air power destiny on its own terms. For Canadians who have watched their country quietly shoulder global responsibilities without demanding attention, this moment matters. It signals a shift in mindset, a decision to stop outsourcing strategic control and start defining national defense on Canadian terms. The conversation now belongs to the public. Industrial growth, Arctic deterrence, strategic independence. Each reflects a different dimension of national strength. Canada is no longer silent. The question is what it will choose to say. Subscribe now. The decision is coming.